In 1966, a farmer named Cho Han Kyu stood at the edge of a rice field in South Korea, watching his neighbors do something that troubled him deeply. They were pouring bags of white powder into the soil, synthetic fertilizer, imported from chemical plants, purchased on credit, and every year they needed more of it. The soil was getting weaker, the bags were getting more expensive, the farmers were getting poorer. Cho had grown up working this same land with his hands. He knew the soil did not use to need this. He walked home and started writing down everything he remembered from the old ways. Welcome to nature's lost vault. What Cho remembered was a system Korean farmers had practiced for centuries before the chemical age arrived. A closed-loop method of feeding the earth using what the farm itself produced. Kitchen scraps, eggshells, vinegar brewed from rice, fermented plant material. Ingredients every household had in abundance. Ingredients that cost nothing. Together, these created something synthetic. Fertilizer companies could not replicate in a bag, living nutrition immediately available, drawn directly from the land. The practice had ancient roots. For as far back as records exist, Korean and Japanese farmers understood something that Western agricultural science would take another century to confirm. Calcium is the foundation of a healthy plant. Without it, cell walls collapse. Fruits split before they ripen. Tomatoes rot from the bottom up before they ever turn red. Leaves curl. Growth stalls. And no amount of nitrogen or phosphorus fixes it if the calcium is missing. The problem was never that calcium was unavailable. It was that the calcium was locked, sitting in a form the plant could not use, and the answer was sitting in the kitchen the whole time. Eggshells are 95% calcium carbonate. That is an extraordinary concentration of the exact nutrient your soil is likely lacking. But calcium carbonate is insoluble. Throw a handful of crushed shells into your garden, and they will still be sitting there, largely intact, years later. The mineral is locked away behind a chemical wall the plant cannot breach. Cho, and the farming tradition he studied, understood this barrier. They also understood what broke it. Acid, specifically the acetic acid in vinegar. When eggshells meet vinegar, something happens that looks almost like magic. The shells begin to dissolve. The liquid fizzes and bubbles as the locked calcium is pulled free from its carbonate prison and transformed into calcium acetate. A water-soluble form, the plant can absorb immediately through its leaves or roots. Carbon dioxide is released. The acid is neutralized. What remains is a clear liquid holding one of the most bioavailable forms of plant calcium on Earth. This is what Cho called water-soluble calcium, and the results in the field were not subtle. By the time Cho's methods reached Hawaii in the early 2000s, researchers at the University of Hawaii put them to the test. The numbers that came back were hard to argue with. Farms practicing Cho's methods doubled their crop productivity while cutting water use by 30%. They stopped buying pesticides. They stopped buying fertilizer. Meanwhile, outside the university's test plots, a different kind of mathematics was taking shape. The global synthetic calcium fertilizer industry generates billions of dollars every year, selling farmers the calcium their soil naturally needs. Industrial calcium nitrate is now a $14 billion market. Every bag sold is a bag that replaced something a farmer once made at home from breakfast scraps. This was not an accident of progress. This was a business model built on forgetting. When American agricultural extension offices expanded after World War II, they were aligned with the same chemical companies that made synthetic fertilizer profitable. They published guides on what to buy, not what to make. They trained a generation of farmers to see their kitchen scraps as waste and their soil fertility as a purchase. The idea that a mason jar and a dozen eggshells could solve a calcium deficiency was never going to appear in a USDA pamphlet. There was no profit in it. Cho understood this clearly. He spent his life traveling to more than 30 countries, teaching farmers to close the loop, to stop buying what they could make. He trained over 18,000 students at his institute over a lifetime of teaching. He never patented the method. He never sold a product. He gave the knowledge away because he knew that was the only way it would survive. Start saving your eggshells. Rinse them with warm water and let them dry completely. Once you have a dozen or so, spread them in a dry pan over low heat for about 20 minutes. Do not scorch them, just drive off the remaining moisture and the inner membrane. The shells will lighten slightly. Let them cool, then crush them into small pieces. Place the crushed shells inside a clean glass jar. Pour in vinegar at a ratio of about 10 parts vinegar to 1 part shells. Any vinegar works, white, apple cider, or rice. The acetic acid is what matters. Within minutes, you will see bubbles rising. That is the calcium being released. Drape a breathable cloth over the mouth of the jar instead of a lid. Set it out of direct sunlight and let it sit for 7 to 10 days. When the bubbling stops entirely, your calcium is ready. Strain out the remaining shell fragments. Dilute 1 tablespoon of this liquid per gallon of water. You can apply it directly to the soil or use a spray bottle on the leaves in the early morning. The calcium enters the plant in hours, not months. The difference shows up in your harvest. Tomatoes that used to crack or develop blossom end rot stay firm. Squash fills out properly. Peppers hold their skin tight. The fruit stores longer because calcium-rich cell walls resist breakdown from the inside. This is not folklore. It is what calcium does at the cellular level. The other thing you will notice is what happens beneath the surface. Each watering cycle gently adjusts the soil chemistry. Calcium opens pathways for other nutrients to move and reduces soil compaction. Where soils had gone hard from years of synthetic inputs, the slow return of organic calcium unlocks what was already there. A few jars on a windowsill. A dozen eggs, a bottle of vinegar. This is what a $14 billion industry replaced. Not because the old method failed, because Cho's mason jar cannot be sold, because a technique that costs nothing and works indefinitely has no place in a supply chain built around annual purchases. The knowledge did not disappear. It survived in the notebooks of a Korean farmer who refused to watch his neighbors borrow against failing soil. And it survives in your kitchen right now, in every eggshell you throw away without knowing what it holds. The calcium was always there, locked, waiting, 1 jar of vinegar away from becoming the most powerful thing you can give your garden. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe to Nature's Lost Vault and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve what they tried to erase. The next vault opens soon.